You think your biggest enemy is failure. It isn't. Your biggest enemy is the habit you defend every single day without even noticing it. You wake up believing you're making choices, but most of your life is being lived by patterns you never questioned. Patterns that quietly steal your confidence, your discipline, your respect, and your future. Deep down, you already know this. That's why certain moments feel unbearable. You tell yourself tomorrow will be different, yet tomorrow always looks suspiciously like yesterday. So ask yourself one question. What if the person destroying your life isn't someone who hates you? What if it's the version of you that refuses to kill the habits keeping you weak? If you're one of the few people willing to face uncomfortable truths instead of running from them, subscribe and become part of this Stoic mindset community. Most people want comfort. Here, we choose transformation, because today isn't about building better habits. It's about executing the ones quietly executing you. The first habit isn't obvious because society rewards it. People even praise it. They call it being nice, being understanding, being available. But beneath those words hides something much darker. Approval addiction. You tell yourself you're kind, yet every decision is secretly filtered through one terrifying question. What will they think of me? That single question has imprisoned millions. It changes the clothes you wear, the words you speak, the dreams you postpone, the boundaries you never set, the opportunities you never take. You don't live your own life. You negotiate it. Every compliment becomes emotional food. Every criticism becomes emotional poison. The frightening part is that you don't even realize you're hungry. Marcus Aurelius understood something most people never will. Your peace cannot depend on another person's opinion because opinions belong to them, not to you. Yet every day, people surrender control of their emotions to strangers. One sarcastic comment destroys their confidence. One rejection convinces them they're worthless. One ignored message ruins an entire evening. Think about how much power you've handed away. Someone doesn't even have to touch you anymore. They only need to withhold attention. That is modern slavery. Not chains around your wrists, chains around your emotions. The manipulator understands this better than you do. They know attention is currency. They know silence creates anxiety. They know inconsistency creates obsession. Give someone just enough validation to keep them chasing, then pull it away. Watch them lose themselves. This isn't love. It isn't friendship. It's psychological conditioning. And the most dangerous part? Most people willingly participate. They become addicted to earning approval instead of earning self-respect. Here's the truth that stings. The more desperately you want people to like you, the less they respect you. Because desperation has a smell. Confidence doesn't beg. Strength doesn't negotiate. A mountain never asks permission to stand tall. So why do you? Here's your first mindset shift. Freedom begins the moment you stop auditioning for people who were never qualified to judge you. But approval isn't the deepest disease. It's only the symptom. There's another habit feeding it every single day. And it's so common that almost everyone mistakes it for normal behavior. The habit of escaping discomfort. Your phone vibrates. You check it. Silence feels uncomfortable. You open social media. Work becomes difficult. You suddenly remember you need coffee. Your goals demand sacrifice. You tell yourself you'll start on Monday. Notice the pattern? You aren't avoiding pain. You're avoiding growth disguised as pain. Comfort feels harmless because it never attacks you. It simply whispers, rest a little longer. You deserve a break. You've worked hard enough. Tomorrow is fine. Those whispers don't sound dangerous. Neither does rust. But rust destroys steel without making a sound. Comfort works the same way. Character doesn't collapse overnight. It decays quietly. One excuse, one delay, one distraction, one compromise, until one day you wake up living a life you never intended to create. Seneca believed hardship reveals the person you truly are. Modern life does the opposite. It hides you beneath endless convenience. Food arrives at your door. Entertainment follows you everywhere. Distraction fits inside your pocket. You never have to be alone with your own thoughts. And that's exactly why so many people fear silence. Because silence removes distractions. Suddenly you hear the voice you've been drowning for years. The voice asking, "What are you doing with your life?" That question terrifies people more than failure itself. So they scroll, they binge, they gossip, they consume. Anything except facing themselves. Here's another mindset shift. The greatest addiction isn't social media. It's escaping yourself. Until you learn to sit quietly without needing constant stimulation, your mind will always belong to something else. The strongest people aren't those who never suffer. They're the ones who stop running every time suffering knocks. Think back to every moment you've grown. Was it comfort or was it challenge? The promotion required pressure. The stronger body required pain. The wiser mind required mistakes. The calmer soul required storms. Growth has never worn comfortable clothes, yet people continue searching for easy paths. Nietzsche warned that those who have a reason to endure can survive almost anything. Most people don't lack strength. They lack a reason strong enough to endure discomfort, which means every inconvenience becomes an excuse. Every obstacle becomes proof they should quit. Every criticism becomes permission to surrender. Here's another shift. Pain is information. Comfort is sedation. One teaches, the other numbs. Ask yourself honestly, which one have you been choosing? Now we arrive at a habit even more destructive. Reacting emotionally to everything. Someone insults you, you react. Someone disagrees, you react. Someone succeeds, you compare. Someone ignores you, you panic. Notice what keeps happening? Your emotional buttons are exposed for everyone to press. Every reaction tells people exactly how to control you. The calmest person in the room isn't emotionless. They're simply difficult to manipulate. Imagine someone trying to start a fire. They throw sparks, but nothing burns. Eventually they stop trying. That's emotional mastery. Not pretending nothing hurts. Choosing what deserves your energy. Every unnecessary reaction leaks power. Every unnecessary argument feeds someone else's control. Every unnecessary explanation weakens your position. Silence often says what words never can. People mistake silence for weakness because they confuse noise with strength. But oceans don't roar to prove they're deep. Your emotions are valuable. Stop spending them on people who haven't earned access. Another mindset shift. Your peace becomes untouchable when your reactions become intentional. Here's something darker. Some people want you emotional. Not because they hate you, because emotional people are predictable. Predictable people are controllable. Controllable people are useful. That's why manipulation rarely begins with force. It begins with emotion. Offend them, confuse them, flatter them, ignore them, repeat. Soon they'll behave exactly how you expect. The question is, how many of your decisions are actually yours? How many were triggered by someone else's words? How many purchases, relationships, arguments, dreams, regrets? The Stoics understood something modern psychology keeps proving. Between what happens and how you respond exists a space. Inside that space lives freedom. Most people never enter it. They react too quickly. They surrender before thinking. They give away power before realizing they had it. And that's only the beginning, because the next habit is far more dangerous than approval, comfort, or emotional reactions combined. It doesn't just weaken your mind. It quietly reshapes your identity until you no longer recognize the person staring back in the mirror. And once that habit takes control, escaping it becomes harder than anyone is prepared to admit. There is a habit more dangerous than seeking approval, more destructive than chasing comfort, and more invisible than emotional reactions. It is the habit of lying to yourself. Not the obvious lies, the quiet ones, the ones you repeat so often they become your identity. I'll start when I'm ready. I work better under pressure. This is just who I am. I don't have enough time. I'll change after this week. Every one of those sentences feels harmless because they don't sound like deception. They sound reasonable. They sound intelligent. They sound familiar. That is exactly why they are so dangerous. The human mind will do almost anything to protect its current identity, even if that identity is making you miserable. It would rather preserve a painful certainty than face an uncertain transformation. This is why years pass without change. Not because people lack opportunities, because they defend the habits that created the life they secretly complain about. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the greatest battle was not against other people. It was against the excuses the mind invents to avoid responsibility. He understood something modern psychology confirms today. The mind is a master lawyer, can justify almost anything. If you skip your workout, it gives you a logical explanation. If you avoid difficult conversations, it calls it keeping the peace. If you procrastinate, it tells you you're waiting for the perfect moment. Notice what happened. The habit never changes. Only the excuse does. That is why self-deception is so difficult to detect. You don't feel like you're lying. You feel like you're being realistic. Ask yourself a question that most people never dare to ask. What if your biggest limitation isn't your circumstances? What if it's the story you've been repeating inside your own head? Every identity begins as a sentence. I'm shy. I'm unlucky. I'm always rejected. I'm not disciplined. I've never been confident. After repeating those words long enough, your brain stops questioning them. It begins proving them. You start noticing only the evidence that supports the identity you've chosen. Every failure confirms it. Every success is dismissed as luck. Without realizing it, you become the prison guard of your own potential. Here is the mindset shift. Your life changes the moment you stop asking, "Is this true?" and begin asking, "Does believing this serve me?" Those are two completely different questions. One keeps you trapped in the past. The other creates your future. This is why the Stoics practiced constant self-examination. Not to criticize themselves, to expose themselves. Every evening, Seneca reflected on his actions with ruthless honesty. He didn't ask whether life had treated him fairly. He asked whether he had lived according to his own principles. Imagine doing that every night. No excuses, no blame, no pretending, only truth. Most people fear criticism from others. The wise fear self-deception far more, because criticism wounds your ego. Self-deception destroys your future. But once you begin telling yourself the truth, another enemy immediately appears. Comparison. It begins so quietly you hardly notice it. Someone buys a better car. Someone gets married. Someone builds a successful business. Someone has a better body. Someone receives thousands of likes. Suddenly, your own life begins to feel smaller. Nothing actually changed. Only your perception did. That is the cruel power of comparison. It steals satisfaction without taking anything from you. The ancient Stoics understood that suffering rarely comes from reality itself. It comes from the judgments we place upon reality. Your neighbor's success doesn't create your pain. Your interpretation does. Think about how often your happiness depends on measuring yourself against someone else. Someone else runs faster. You feel slow. Someone earns more. You feel poor. Someone looks happier. You feel empty. Comparison has convinced you that your worth is determined by another person's achievements. That is psychological slavery disguised as ambition. Modern society profits from this habit. Every advertisement whispers the same message. You are incomplete. Every social media feed quietly reinforces it. You should be further ahead. You should look like this. You should own that. You should become them. But the Stoic asks a different question. Am I becoming a better version of myself than I was yesterday? Notice the difference. One question creates envy. The other creates growth. Here is another mindset shift. Comparison is impossible to win because the finish line keeps moving. Even if you surpass one person, your eyes immediately search for another. The race never ends because it was never your race. Epictetus taught that peace comes from focusing only on what belongs to you. Your thoughts, your choices, your discipline, your character, not someone else's timeline, not someone else's income, not someone else's popularity. Every minute spent watching another person's life is a minute stolen from building your own. Think about that. The person you envy isn't delaying your dreams. You are. Comparison quietly drains energy that should have been invested in action. Instead of building, you observe. Instead of creating, you consume. Instead of improving, you measure. That habit slowly convinces you that watching life is the same as living it. It isn't. There is another habit hiding beneath comparison. Waiting. Waiting until you feel confident. Waiting until conditions improve. Waiting until fear disappears. Waiting until people support you. Waiting until motivation arrives. Your entire future is postponed because you are negotiating with uncertainty. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Confidence has never come before action. It has always followed it. You don't become courageous and then face fear. You face fear until courage is born. Most people reverse the order. That is why they never begin. Marcus Aurelius never waited to feel motivated to fulfill his duty as emperor. He acted because duty mattered more than emotion. This is one of the greatest lessons Stoicism offers. Feelings are temporary. Principles endure. If your actions depend on your emotions, your life will always be unstable. Some mornings you'll conquer the world. Other mornings you'll conquer nothing. But if your actions are guided by principles instead of moods, your progress becomes inevitable. Another mindset shift. Discipline is remembering what matters after motivation disappears. Think about a river. It doesn't reach the ocean because it feels inspired. It reaches the ocean because it never stops flowing. Consistency is more powerful than intensity. Small actions repeated daily defeat massive efforts repeated occasionally. People admire dramatic transformations. They overlook ordinary consistency. Yet ordinary consistency creates extraordinary lives. Now consider one of the most destructive habits of all. Talking too much. Not because words are evil, because unnecessary words leak strength. Watch people carefully. When they receive good news, they announce it immediately. When they begin a new goal, they tell everyone. When they have an idea, they seek applause before taking action. For a brief moment, talking about success feels almost as satisfying as achieving it. That feeling is dangerous. Your brain receives a reward before you've earned one. The mission begins to feel complete. Energy that should have fueled action escapes through conversation. The Stoics respected silence because silence protects intention. Marcus Aurelius filled his private journal with reflections, not performances. He wasn't trying to impress the world. He was trying to master himself. Today's world encourages the opposite. Share everything, post everything, explain everything, defend everything, react to everything. But power grows quietly. Look at nature. The tallest trees grow in silence. The strongest mountains never announce their strength. The deepest oceans don't argue about their depth. Only insecure things constantly demand attention. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you explained yourself to people who had already decided not to understand you? Every explanation handed them another opportunity to challenge you. Silence would have protected your peace. Another mindset shift. Not every opinion deserves your response. Not every accusation deserves your defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes silence is the highest form of confidence. Because silence tells the world something powerful. I know who I am. People become uncomfortable around those who don't constantly seek validation. Why? Because silence removes predictability. It becomes impossible to manipulate someone who doesn't react to every provocation. That is why emotionally mature people often appear mysterious. Not because they are hiding secrets, because they have stopped giving away access to their inner world. Imagine how much stronger your mind would become if every word had purpose, if every sentence carried intention, if every response was chosen instead of triggered. Your presence would change. People would begin listening more carefully because your words would become rare. Scarcity creates value. This applies to attention. It applies to time. It applies to speech. It even applies to your emotional energy. Most people spend all three carelessly. The wise protect them fiercely, But there is one final habit in this part that quietly destroys everything we've discussed. It disguises itself as intelligence. It disguises itself as preparation. It disguises itself as responsibility. Yet it has buried more dreams than failure ever could. Overthinking. First, it feels productive. You analyze every possibility, every risk, every outcome, every mistake that could happen. You convince yourself you're planning, but you're not moving. You're standing still while your mind runs in circles. The Stoics understood that uncertainty can never be eliminated. No amount of thinking guarantees safety. Action reveals what thought never can. You cannot think your way into confidence. You act your way into it. Every decision carries uncertainty. Waiting for certainty is simply another way of refusing to live. And here's the terrifying part. The longer you stay inside your own head, the louder fear becomes. Because fear grows best in imagination. Reality is often far less frightening than the stories your mind invents. So ask yourself one final question before we continue. How much of your life has been stolen, not by failure, not by other people, but by conversations you've been having with yourself that never led to action? Because in the next part, we're going to expose the habits that silently destroy discipline itself. The invisible routines that make strong people weak, ambitious people ordinary, and capable people settle for lives far beneath their potential. And once you see them, you'll never be able to unsee them. There is a moment in every person's life that separates who they are from who they could become. It isn't a grand opportunity. It isn't luck. It isn't talent. It is the moment they realize that every habit is a vote for an identity. Every morning you either strengthen the person you want to become, or you reinforce the person you're trying to escape. There is no neutral day. There is no harmless habit. Your character is not built during extraordinary moments. It is sculpted by the ordinary decisions nobody applauds. Most people believe discipline is about forcing yourself to do difficult things. It isn't. Discipline is about becoming the kind of person who no longer negotiates with what must be done. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. Every dawn he reminded himself that he would meet selfishness, arrogance, dishonesty, envy, and ignorance. He didn't do this to become cynical. He did it to prepare his mind before the world had a chance to disturb it. That is the difference between a trained mind and an untrained one. The trained mind expects resistance. The untrained mind expects comfort. When comfort disappears, one remains calm while the other falls apart. This leads to another habit that silently destroys your future. The habit of negotiating with yourself. You hear the alarm. I'll sleep 10 more minutes. You plan to exercise. I'll start tomorrow. You promised yourself to read. I've had a long day. Notice something. Every negotiation ends the same way. The weaker version of you wins. You think you're making small compromises. You're actually teaching your brain a dangerous lesson. My promises don't matter. Read that again. Every time you betray your own word, your mind loses trust in you. This is why so many people struggle with confidence. Confidence is not built by hearing encouraging words. Confidence is built when your actions repeatedly prove that your word has value. If you cannot trust yourself to keep a simple promise, why would your mind believe you can accomplish extraordinary things? That is why discipline creates confidence. Not because discipline is impressive, because it creates evidence. Every completed task whispers something powerful. I do what I say. Every excuse whispers the opposite. I cannot depend on myself. Seneca believed that the greatest form of wealth was self-command. Think about that. Not money, not influence, not status. Self-command. Because a person who governs himself cannot easily be ruled by temptation. Look around at the modern world. Everything competes for your attention. Your phone vibrates. Advertisements promise happiness. Algorithms study your behavior better than you study yourself. Every notification asks the same silent question. Can I interrupt your life? Most people answer yes without realizing it. They believe they have an attention problem. They don't. They have an ownership problem. They no longer own their own mind. Attention has become the most valuable currency on earth because wherever attention goes, your life follows. If someone controls your attention, they slowly influence your decisions, your beliefs, your emotions, even your identity. Epictetus taught that no one can truly harm you unless they gain control over your judgment. That wisdom has never been more relevant. Today, people willingly hand over their judgment every hour. One headline changes their mood. One comment ruins their confidence. One trending opinion reshapes their beliefs. Pause for a moment. How many opinions do you hold because you carefully examined them? And how many were simply absorbed through repetition? The mind accepts what it repeatedly consumes. That is why your mental diet is just as important as your physical one. You would never knowingly drink poison water. Yet many people spend hours consuming fear, outrage, gossip, comparison, and meaningless entertainment. Then they wonder why their minds feel anxious. The answer has been entering through their eyes every day. Here is another mindset shift. You become what repeatedly enters your attention. Guard your mind with the same seriousness you guard your home. Not everyone deserves access. Not every idea deserves space. Not every voice deserves influence. Now let's expose another habit that appears harmless. Complaining. Most people believe complaining relieves pressure. It doesn't. It strengthens helplessness. Every complaint reinforces one message to your subconscious. I have no power. The Stoics understood something revolutionary. You always possess one thing that circumstances cannot steal. Your response. Marcus Aurelius never wasted energy wishing reality were different. He accepted what existed and asked one question. What is the best action I can take now? That question changes everything. It shifts your focus from blame to responsibility. Responsibility is frightening because it removes excuses, but it is also liberating because it restores power. Think carefully. The moment you stop blaming your past, your parents, society, bad luck, or difficult people, you reclaim your future, not because those things never hurt you, but because continuing to blame them gives them authority over the rest of your life. The strongest people are not those who suffered the least. They are those who refused to let suffering become their identity. Pain is an event. Victimhood is a habit. One happens to you. The other is repeated by you. That distinction is everything. Ask yourself honestly, have you been carrying old pain because it protects you from new responsibility? Many people never heal because healing would require becoming accountable for the life they build next. Holding onto the wound becomes easier than creating a future. That is why resentment feels strangely comfortable. It gives you someone to blame, but resentment never punishes the person who hurt you. It punishes the one carrying it. Seneca compared anger to grasping a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You burn first, every time. The person who offended you may have forgotten the incident years ago. Meanwhile, you replay it daily. Who is really imprisoned? This is why forgiveness in the Stoic sense is not weakness. It is refusing to let another person's actions continue governing your inner world. You do not forgive because they deserve peace. You forgive because you deserve freedom. Freedom begins where resentment ends. But there is another habit even more deceptive. The habit of chasing motivation. People wait to feel inspired before taking action. They believe motivation creates movement. The truth is the opposite. Movement creates motivation. Action generates energy. Stillness breeds doubt. Notice how difficult a task appears before you begin. Then notice how much easier it becomes once you're already moving. Your brain resists starting because beginnings require uncertainty. Once momentum exists, resistance weakens. This is why the Stoics valued action over emotion. Your feelings are visitors. Your principles are permanent. If you only act when you feel like it, your emotions become your master. If you act according to your values regardless of mood, your character becomes your master. That is self-mastery, not controlling the world, controlling yourself. And perhaps that is the greatest misunderstanding about strength. Strength is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek applause. It quietly keeps promises long after excitement has faded. It wakes up when no one is watching. It chooses discipline when excuses seem reasonable. It remains calm when chaos invites panic. It continues when comfort begs it to stop. Most people admire this from a distance. Few choose to become it, because becoming it requires killing one final illusion. The illusion that someone else is coming to save you. No mentor can live your discipline. No book can replace your action. No video can transform you without your participation. Wisdom is not collected. It is practiced. Knowledge without action is another form of procrastination. Many people consume endless self-improvement content. They know exactly what to do, yet their lives remain unchanged. Why? Because learning became a substitute for doing. It feels productive. It isn't. It is simply procrastination wearing the mask of preparation. Ask yourself a difficult question. How much of what you know have you actually lived? That question separates students from practitioners. It separates admirers from masters. And it exposes a truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Because the final habits you are about to confront are the deepest of all. They don't merely shape your actions. They shape the person you believe yourself to be. Once you uncover them, you'll realize that your greatest prison was never built by the world. It was built by invisible patterns repeated so often. They began to feel like you. If this message made you uncomfortable, that's a good sign. Comfort rarely changes a life. Truth does. The habits we expose today weren't just behaviors. They were invisible chains. Chains that convinced you to seek approval instead of self-respect. To chase comfort instead of growth. To react instead of think. To compare instead of create. To wait instead of act. To complain instead of take responsibility. To consume instead of build. To believe that one more excuse wouldn't matter. But now you see them. And once you truly see a chain, you can never pretend it's freedom again. The question is no longer, what habits do I have? The question is, which habits will I refuse to carry into tomorrow? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every new day was another chance to become a better human being. Not through grand speeches, but through disciplined action. Seneca understood that a life is built one decision at a time. Epictetus taught that while you cannot control what happens to you, you can always control the character you choose to build. That choice belongs to you now. Not next Monday. Not next month. Not when life becomes easier. Right now. When this video ends, nothing around you will magically change. Your room will look the same. Your phone will still be there. Your problems may still exist. But one thing can be different. The person making the next decision. Because transformation doesn't happen when your circumstances change. It happens when your standards change. Remember this whenever you're tempted to fall back into old patterns. Every excuse weakens your future. Every disciplined action strengthens your identity. Every moment of self-control is a brick in the foundation of an unshakable mind. The strongest people aren't born different. They simply refuse to let weak habits make their decisions. So before you leave, make a declaration, not to me, but to yourself. In the comments, type, "My mind belongs to me." Don't write it because it sounds powerful. Write it as a promise that from this day forward, your emotions, your choices, and your future will no longer be controlled by fear, comfort, or the opinions of others. If this video challenged the way you think, share it with someone who needs to hear these truths. You never know whose life could change because you chose to send one video. And if you're committed to building a mind that cannot be manipulated, subscribe to Stoic Mindset. This community isn't for people looking for quick motivation. It's for those willing to confront themselves, embrace discipline, and pursue lasting inner freedom, one decision at a time. Now don't stop here. The next video on your screen reveals the hidden psychological traps that silently control most people's lives, and how to break free from them before they shape your future. Click it now, because the next lesson may expose the one weakness you still don't know you have.